I do tonight. Thank you. You almost have to feel sorry for him. He did his best to cancel me. Instead, he forced millions of people to watch the show. That backfired bigly. He might have to release the Epstein files to distract us from this now.
Huge, absolutely huge. What are we talking about here? Well, let's take a look at YouTube views, Jimmy Kimmel Live video views. The 6-month median, the median video only gets 240,000. Look how many views Tuesday night's monologue already has. 6.7 million. That's over 25 times as large as the median Jimmy Kimmel video normally gets. I was looking, it is by far the largest video in at least 6 months. So if Donald Trump's idea was to give Jimmy Kimmel more press and more viewership, he absolutely did so. Of course, I don't think that is what Donald Trump intended. Take a look here. Record high Google searches last night for what time is Jimmy Kimmel on. You wouldn't have to check what time Jimmy Kimmel was on if you were a regular viewer. The reason that people were checking what time Jimmy Kimmel was on, because he was potentially pulling in a lot of viewers who normally didn't watch. And get this, it was up over 10,000%. My goodness gracious. This, of course, dates all the way back since 2004, basically since Jimmy Kimmel was first on the air. So no, it was not just on YouTube. There was a ton of interest, what we're talking about nationwide, worldwide, in terms of what time was Jimmy Kimmel on, because I don't normally watch him, but maybe I want to take a gander because maybe I'm Jimmy Kimmel. And we saw Google searches last week for boycotting Disney and canceling Disney Plus go way up. But take a look here. Google searches versus last week's peak. Boycotting Disney, down about 75% as of last night. How about cancel Disney Plus? Down about 75% from its peak. So the bottom line is this was great for Jimmy Kimmel in terms of what we see so far on YouTube. It's probably going to translate to the ratings. And also Jimmy Kimmel's return is good for Disney because all of a sudden people aren't so interested in boycotting them or canceling their Disney Plus subscription. So it ends up being pretty decent for Disney's bottom line, bringing Jimmy Kimmel back.
Donald Trump has once again managed to sabotage himself in spectacular fashion. In his furious Truth Social rant about Jimmy Kimmel's return to late-night television, Trump didn't just attack ABC and threaten Kimmel with lawsuits. He openly admitted something that completely shatters the narrative his defenders had been clinging to. For weeks, Republican surrogates and MAGA media figures tried to argue that Kimmel's suspension was purely a private business decision, that the government had no involvement, and that Trump himself was not responsible for the late-night host being yanked off the air. But in his meltdown, Trump revealed that his White House was in direct communication with ABC executives and that they had assured him Kimmel was permanently canceled. In other words, the President of the United States was personally invested in silencing a critic, leaning on a private network for political reasons, and then raging publicly when they failed to follow through on their promise. That is not just embarrassing, it is the definition of government censorship, a blatant abuse of power, and a dangerous precedent for free speech in America. Trump has once again exposed himself as a thin-skinned authoritarian who cannot tolerate being mocked and who will weaponize every level of power to settle personal grudges. The irony is that he didn't even need reporters or investigators to expose this corruption. He confessed it himself on his own social media platform, blowing up the lies of his allies and humiliating everyone who tried to cover for him. But here's where the story gets even more brutal for Trump. His tantrum backfired in the worst possible way. Instead of burying Jimmy Kimmel's career, Trump's attacks have launched him into a whole new level of popularity. Kimmel's comeback monologue didn't just perform well, it absolutely exploded, pulling in over 6 million YouTube views within hours, more than 25 times his normal numbers. And at the time of reporting, it had already crossed 11 million views. Google searches for what time is Jimmy Kimmel on spiked by over 10,000%, the highest level since Kimmel first debuted in 2004, proving that millions of new viewers tuned in who don't normally watch late-night television. Far from being bad for business, Kimmel's return immediately reduced the pressure on Disney. as online calls to boycott Disney and cancel Disney Plus. Subscriptions collapsed by 70% almost overnight. The public had punished the company when Kimmel was suspended, but rewarded them the moment he came back. In other words,
Disney realized that the real danger to their bottom line wasn't Trump's threats, it was alienating their audience by caving to him. And now Trump's whining about election interference and unfair comedy has only made him look weaker, pettier, and more desperate than ever before. He has not only reignited interest in Kimmel, but he has also given his critics a mountain of evidence that he did, in fact, abuse his position to try to silence a media figure he didn't like. Trump's narcissism and paranoia have created a political scandal. That shows just how reckless and unfit he is. Because if this is how far he'll go to shut down a late-night comedian, just imagine what he'd do with a second term in office.